Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really top class beers from these guys over the last 18 months or so, I want to say, and they are just doing, really interesting and very varied stuff. Definitely one of the Scottish breweries to check out, particularly if you're interested in sour beers. They've got a really just interesting and very diverse selection of those. But yeah, for this review then we are going to head through to Edinburgh, although we should say Dundee for these guys as well because that's where they brew their beers mainly, and we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Vault City Brewing. So this particular beer is called the OG IPA. It comes in at 7.2% ABV, and this one is an orange sour with Citra Enigma added into the brew. So yeah, not often that you come across an orange sour. I think this might well be the first orange sour that I'm reviewing for you on the channel. I have had some regular orange beers, if that makes sense, but never an orange sour. So yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. Hopefully it's another interesting beer, but based on the other beers I've had from Vault City, I think this one should be pretty damn good actually. My first time trying an orange sour from these guys, and I think the only other orange sour beer that I've had was actually at the Mikela Balhaun Festival from one of the quite famous Lambic breweries, come to think of. I can't remember which one though. But yeah, very curious to see how this one turns out. Hopefully it's another interesting beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, this will be review number 8 or so that I've done from Vault City Brewing, and this was bought directly from their own web shop. If you spend over £25 you get free delivery throughout Scotland, and I think in the rest of the UK as well, so that is pretty cool. But yeah, curious to see how this one turns out, as I said, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So let's see how we get on. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Vault City Brewing before, and you will definitely see more added to that list in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, but quite regularly at the moment because I am enjoying a little bit of time at home in the motherland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Vault City Brewing. So as I've told you before, Vault City Brewing were originally based in Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland in the east, and they were founded back in 2018 by Johnny Horn, Adele Wilkie and Stephen Smith Hay. So Johnny worked at the Hanging Bat in Edinburgh on Lothian Road, which is a little brew pub. Very nice place that I would recommend you visit if you're in the city. I want to get an out and about video there done, but we'll see about that a bit later on once COVID-19 buggers off. But yeah, Johnny worked at the Hanging Bat, and Stephen and Adele were regular customers, and just over time they became friends. So Johnny was studying at the time and was a keen home brewer, as was Stephen, and the two began to brew a little bit together and then started planning their own brewery. And Adele apparently contributed a lot of the ideas to this in the early stages and then joined them properly. But Johnny was a great fan of the Belgian lambics and sours, and this really rubbed off on Adele and Stephen, and when they were getting started they felt that there was a gap in the Scottish beer scene for a brewery that was producing sour beers, and this is the route they decided they were going to take. But initially they didn't think much about the company making money, and so they just set up a big kind of glorified home brewing kit as their main brewery in Stephen and Adele's kitchen. They began brewing weekly back in July of 2018, and they just kind of took off from there. But over the last 2 years or so they've been travelling around Europe, putting their beers out there at different beer festivals. I actually first heard about this brewery when I was at Brewskival in Helsingborg in Skåne, and that was the first time I heard of these guys. It was quite funny to go to one of my local beer festivals over in Sweden and then hear about a Scottish brewery that I didn't know about. So yeah, by the time I found them though, they'd sold out all of their beer, so you kind of knew it was good. So the next time I came home I made sure I got hold of a couple of their beers, and those were the Iron Brew Sour and the Sour IPA version 1. if I remember rightly. Those were the first 2 beers I tried from Vault City, and I had to get those through in Edinburgh actually, but very, very nice beers, I have to say. But yeah, as of January 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 70 different kinds of beer, which is pretty impressive when you consider they're only about 2.5 years old, and now they're brewing most of their beers at 71 Brewing in Dundee, who are another brewery I recommend you check out as well. But yeah, these beers are now produced in Dundee, and they've got a whole range of quirky sours. So far on the channel you've seen me review the Tabery sour, the Iron Brew sour, and the Yuzu Galaxy was a very, very nice one as well actually. So they're not scared to try different things with the beers, and their sours always tend to be really quite nice actually. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. But the name Vault City actually comes from the Edinburgh or Southside Vaults as they're known in the city, and these were built into the arches on the Southside Bridge in Edinburgh, and they were workshops, taverns, cobblers, and things like this actually. They wanted to take a name from Edinburgh for the brewery, which I think is very, very nice. I guess the next stage for these guys would be to set up a tap room somewhere, so it would be really cool to see a Vault City tap room open up in Edinburgh somewhere. Hopefully that is something that we can do, but I do hope at some stage that I can arrange to meet Stephen, Adele and Johnny at some stage and do a Meet the Brewery segment with these guys. That would be pretty awesome, considering they are in the very early stages of the brewery. So once the whole COVID-19 thing goes away, maybe in August or September, I can try and set that up with them. That would be great. But yeah, in the meantime, you can enjoy some reviews from them, but we'll see about setting up a Meet the Brewery segment with these guys on my next trip home to Scotland once things have calmed down a little bit. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Vault City Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up. As you can see, it is quite typical of what we've come to expect from Vault City over the last little while. But yeah, the OG IPA, Citra and Enigma. You can see on the back here there is a little bit of a blurb, which I'll read to you in a little bit a minute. But the artwork on this one is by Miyaki Doko, who I wonder if that sounds very much like a Japanese name, and it's got a little bit of rising sun there underneath as well. And it does strike me as a very kind of Japanese style of artwork. Not that I am, artistically well versed, but having been over to Japan because of family connections quite often, I've got a fair recognition of it. But yeah, this one I think should be quite interesting. I'll need to look at that in time for the next review. I never noticed that until I had a little look at this one just before the video. But yeah, as I say on the back, the little blurb here, it says OG IPA, Citra and Enigma. I do wonder if they will bring out different hops, different versions of this beer with different hops, but it says an evolution of our hop forward sour beers, taking lessons learned and ideas sparked in a very citrusy direction. Combining hops with fruit has been a labour of love for us this year, and OG IPA is the culmination of our experiments. The hop duo we liked best from our sour IPA range this year was the Citra and Enigma. For the perfect balance of bright and dank flavours, we've brought this back with a heavy dose of mandarin juice for a citrus bomb of a modern sour beer. So yeah, I think this will be pretty good. Citra, 14% alpha acid, usually gives you a lot of mango flavours. American hop Enigma, I think it's about the same, 14% alpha acid, but it's a very interesting one because it's an Australian hop. It's quite similar to Nelson Sauvin in that it's got a lot of white and green grapey flavours, and it also has a little bit of like a kind of red berry, cranberry sort of thing going on with it as well. So yeah, that's a really interesting thing. Enigma is a hop that I would love to learn a little bit more about, so I'm hoping that OO Brewing back home in Sweden, I say back home, I've got 2 homes now these days I guess, but yeah, back over in Sweden, I'm hoping that OO Brewing with their 100 series, I really hope that they do a 100 Enigma at some stage. But yeah, that is definitely something I would look forward to. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. 7.2% sour beer, this one. As I say, that's the same percentage as their sour IPA series, and you will see me review another one of the sour IPAs really quite soon actually. But yeah, 375ml bottle, this one. I think I paid, it was either £6.50 or £7.25, I can't quite remember. But like I say, Vault City Brewing have a deal where if you're ordering in Scotland, you get free delivery if you spend over £25. So that's definitely worth it. That's basically, I got 4 beers because there was 4 that I was interested in, and obviously when I'm home I didn't want to review so many from the same brewery, but I've ended up, this is one of 8 actually. This is one of 8 Vault City reviews that you're going to see during this extended period at home in Scotland. But, you know, I like their beer. I like their beer, and, you know, it's, if you're going to do a beer review channel, review stuff you like, why not? But always make it diverse, that's what I say. Review stuff you like, try new things, that's what it's all about for me. But yeah, 7.2% orange, orange centred IPA, this one, with Citra and Enigma hops added to it. One of the things I will say about these Vault City beers, and one of the reasons I really like them, is that they put hops in their beers. There's quite a few breweries over in Sweden do these kind of big, smooth, sweet, creamy sours, but they don't put hops in them, and I think the beer just loses a little bit of depth if you don't do that. So I like the fact that that Vault City do use hops, because that's what the Germans did with these kind of Berliner Weisse, Gose sour beers, type sour beers. They always had hops in them, but a lot of the new modern breweries do not put hops in them. The proper practice, from what I understand, with sour beers like that is to use a slightly older hop that's lost a little bit of its potency, and also one that is quite low in alpha acid. So, you know, it makes sense with the German hops. The Hallertaus, the Tettnangers, they are normally about, you know, 5% alpha acid, so nowhere near as big as some of these kind of new world hops that we've got these days. Although the Germans do have the Hallertau Blanc and you know, the Mandarina Bavaria. There's another one that's come out fairly recently from Germany as well that's quite high alpha acid. I forget the name, but yeah, this beer, I have to say, looks absolutely lovely. It does just look like, you know, a kind of foamy orange juice, to be quite honest with you. So it's got a lovely bright kind of mango orange juice type appearance to it. You can see this beer is hazy as hell. I should point out that it's got oats and wheat in the brew. Is it? Yeah, it's got wheat and oats. I was thinking, was it just oats? But yeah, this one has wheat and oats in the brew. Both of those are going to contribute to the haziness of the beer. When it poured, it had about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of creamy coloured head. That's faded away to just be a very thin foamy layer, but you do have quite an impressive ring of froth around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, you've got 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, and a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of that head. But I mean, overall, it looks like a very, very nice beer, and I have to say, I really like how this one goes together. But yeah, certainly in terms of appearance for an orange orientated sour, it's not overly surprising. It just looks like a kind of very hazy New England IPA or something. But it's 7.2%. You know, it's kind of in the middle of what you would expect from a New England IPA, even though it's a sour IPA basically. But yeah, lovely, lovely looking beer, this one. And of course, when it comes to sour beers, you will get a whole range of colours out of these things because of the different fruits and so on. But yeah, looks the part. Let's have a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this beer. Very curious about it. Yeah, that smells very, very nice. It actually does smell like a mix of, you know, that old Sunny Delight juice that you used to get, Sunny D, I think they renamed it later, and a New England IPA. It does come across very similar to that, to be honest. Yeah, I think this is one of these things where this beer is going to have a lot more sort of diversity to the kind of flavour, if you like. As I've said in sour beer reviews before, I don't find sour beers the most complex of things, but for me it's all about, even though they don't have that level of complexity, you don't always need it. Sometimes you know, simplicity can be the best option. You know, some of these single hop beers can just be right on point actually. But yeah, a lot of these sour beers for me are not the most complex of things, but if a well executed sour beer like this can just be, you know, very, very nice. So yeah, they're quite straight shooting in terms of their flavour profile and their aroma profile, but yeah, I've had very, very good beers from Vault City so far. The only one I wasn't too sure about was that double crust raspberry pie, but that was a kind of pastry sour, and I'm just not sure how I feel about that style, to be honest with you. It's one that I don't know if I can really get on board with. It's a little bit like English bitters. I've just never quite been able to get on board with them either. But yeah, I've got a feeling this one will be pretty nice. But let's focus on that aroma, as I said. So straight away with this beer, you get a lot. You can smell that big oaty and wheaty base coming out of this one. For me, this beer does actually have a little bit of a more bitey quality to the wheat, and that kind of makes sense because you have to have something there to almost kind of balance out the orange a little bit, because orange is a very, very powerful fruit. If you're putting that in as an adjunct, it can take over a beer if it's not balanced properly. So yeah, for me there is a good little bit of wheaty bitiness in this one, and that's something I've not quite had from Vault City so far. But you do get a little bit of the smooth oaty character in there, and you can smell that sort of fresh orange juice quality to the beer too. Perhaps there is a wee bit of like a, you know, a slightly Werther's Original kind of not candy brown sugar, like a butter candy type thing in that. I always get a little bit of that from a number of these beers where there's a kind of oat-centric malt base, if you like, so you do get a little bit of that. But yeah, very smooth creamy oats, a little bit of a bitey wheat, some nice kind of Werther's Original butter candy sort of thing coming out of this beer for me. But that's quite, you know, that is a fairly common thing. I've had this sort of nose out of quite a few Vault City beers before, but I really do like it. I love these big, smooth, kind of creamy sours, if you like. But yeah, you can definitely get a bit of the green component from the hops in this beer as well. You can smell I mean, both of these hops are big, high alpha acid things. You know, at 14%, you know, Citra's 14. I think Enigma is maybe just a little touch stronger than Citra is. But yeah, it depends on when during the boil you actually add the hops, and I would suspect that the majority of the hops in this have either been dry hopped or added very, very late in the boil. And when it's later in the boil, that's when you get the focus on flavour and aroma rather than adding the bitterness. If you add them earlier on in the boil of the wort, that's when they give you the bitterness. But yeah, the green side of this beer, I think, is very, very nice. So you've got a little bit of floral aromaticity out of it. You've got some nice lighter kind of grassy elements to the beer as well, and also just a wee tiny, tiny little touch of earthiness out of it, but not a lot. Green component of this beer is primarily bright and floral and kind of quite light and grassy as well, but the grassiness does have a wee bit of zest to it. But yeah, that covers the green side of the hops and the kind of malty side of the beer as well. So let's focus on what you're getting fruit-wise out of this beer. So, I mean, straight away with this one, you're going to notice the orange, but the orange isn't overly kind of pungent, if that makes sense, like you're going to get from grapefruit or passion fruit or whatever. To me, the orange is actually quite almost relaxed and laid back in this beer, which is quite nice actually. But you can definitely get some of the elements from these two hops in here. Like I said, Enigma's going to give you a kind of almost like gooseberry, white, green, grapey sort of thing with a little bit of a kind of red berry-ish type quality, and Citra's going to give you big mangoes and, you know, a lot of other complexities. In a beer like this, I would suspect the lemon lime side of Citra will come out a little bit more. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer is very, very nice. So lovely big kind of juicy orangey, citrusy characters out of this one, but not overly pungent, if that makes sense. You can definitely smell a little bit of that soft mango in there from Citra. It's going to give you that big soft juicy character when there's oats in the malt base. You can, at the front of the nose, you can smell a little bit of that oily gooseberry, white, green, grapey sort of thing as well. And the grassy elements, as I was saying earlier, they've got a little bit of a sort of, they've got a little bit of that kind of lemon limey sort of zest to them. So the grassy components in this beer do come out quite nicely and become quite zesty because of that. So yeah, I do like how this one goes together. So yeah, lovely aroma to this beer, not madly complex, but it's just got a nice bit of depth to it because it's got all these different ingredients in it. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So yeah, let's taste it. This one is the OG IPA, Citra and Enigma edition. I do wonder if there will be more editions of this beer, but this one is a sour IPA coming in at 7.2% ABV, orange added into the brew along with Citra and Enigma hops. Let's have a taste of this and see how we get on. Very, very curious about this beer. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah. Now, that one has a little... I wasn't expecting that. The thing with this beer is that you could not smell the tartness in that. That's one of the more sharp and kind of tart and zippy beers I've had from Vault City so far. Absolutely. That one is definitely quite sharp and quite zippy. Yeah, but I do like it. Again, thumbs up to Vault City on this. I wasn't expecting that, but I'll tell you something, the oranges in this beer really do have a little bit of that pungency I was talking about that grapefruit will normally give you. There's a lot of citrusy pungency to this beer, absolutely. So yeah, the orange does kind of in the early stages. I think this is going to be one of the beers where you get that big dominance of the fruit early on, but then the beer will mellow out a little bit and you'll get other things from it, you know, later on. So yeah, the quality of this beer I think goes together very, very nicely. Yeah, I do like how everything goes together in this one. Actually, this is a really pretty solid beer, I have to say. Yeah, where to start with this one then? The sour. I'm noticing the sour, the kind of big pungent orange in this one does go together quite a lot. What I'll say about this beer is this isn't one of the sweeter sours that you're going to find. It's definitely one of the more kind of citrusy and kind of just pungent sours, if you like, and I was not expecting that from the Aroma. So this one has thrown up another surprise. This is showing another side of what Vault City can do, actually. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. So yeah, let's try and break this beer down then. I mean, straight away with this beer, you can feel you can feel a little bit of the kind of pale malty quality in this one. This beer does have regular barley malt in it as well, but you can feel a little bit of that blanket in that middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate. As you go towards the back third of your palate, you can definitely feel that sort of bready base thickens up a little bit. There is a little bit of bitiness in there, as I say, to balance out the kind of, pardon me, the pungency of that big tropical orange character that this beer has. So yeah, that's an interesting point about this one for sure. It does have a good little bit of a wheaty bitiness on that back end of the palate, so yeah. Yeah, yeah, this is a very, very nice beer in that sense, I have to say. You do get a little bit of a wee bit of a kind of hoppy, you do get a bit of a kind of, in the middle, in that border region between the kind of middle and back third of your palate, there is just a little bit of an almost dryness and bitterness in the beer there, which is quite interesting. It's interesting in that border region between the, you know, between the sort of, that sort of middle kind of third of your palate and the back third of your palate. It's just quite interesting that. But yeah, as you move further forward into that middle third of your palate, you can feel the malt base is just a little bit thinner almost, but you do get a wee bit of the oaty kind of smoothness there. But the big orangey, citrusy character just sits right on top of that. That kind of butter candy thing, that Werther's Original type flavour that I was picking out of there, doesn't really come out in the middle of the palate. It's got on top of that oaty, that slight oaty smoothness, and I think the oaty smoothness comes out the further you go into the aftertaste, and that slightly more crisp white bready character. It's that big citrusy pungency that just sits there on top of that beer. It's quite crazy how that all goes together, to be quite honest with you. I like that about this beer. But this is definitely a big, big zesty beast. I do wonder if I'm maybe drinking this beer very, very fresh, and maybe it just needs a little bit of time to mellow out, because you do get a big green component out of this one as well, actually. I think you do get a little bit of that almost dusty dry hopping kind of thing coming out of it. So maybe I am just drinking this beer very, very fresh, and it needs a wee bit of time to kind of mellow out a bit more. But in fairness, you know, the big citrusy quality that this beer has almost kind of, it sort of makes up, if you like, for, you know, the kind of bitter side of things. So this beer probably is the most IPA-like beer that I've had from these guys so far, come to think of it. So yeah, it is a little bit more. It is a little bit more like a kind of fruit IPA in a sense. It is a little bit more like a kind of fruit New England IPA. But I like this one. It does take a little bit of time for your palate to adjust to it, for sure. But yeah, it's just very quirky how it goes together. So sitting on top of that pale malty, oaty kind of thing in there is more of a kind of big citrusy, just that big dark pungent citrusy character, that towards the front half of that middle third of your palate, that really just sits on top of the thing there. So that's quite interesting, I have to say. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer for the moment then. So in the back corners of the palate, for me, there is definitely a little touch of a kind of earthiness in there. As you move further forward along the side of the beer, you get that nice, you do get quite a bit of bitterness out of this one for me, and that, I suspect, that comes from dry hopping, because it's that sort of dusty thing that you get from these, you know, QDH, TDH and DDH, these, you know, quadruple, triple and double dry hop beers. You really get a bit of that. So I do suspect I'm drinking this beer pretty fresh, but it doesn't say a bottled on date. It doesn't actually give you a bottled on date, but it says it's best before the 1st of the 12th 2022, and I'm drinking this beer for you on the 14th of January, so I'm guessing this beer, it will probably be a year in the bottle that they recommend. So this one, at this point in time, I suspect it's about 6 weeks old, and I'm not sure at what stage they would, I think they would probably say, yeah, about 6 weeks maturity. I think this beer was a fairly recent release, to be honest with you, but it still tastes very, very fresh. So you do, on that side of your palate there, you get that big pungent, almost, it's not spicy, but very kind of dry sort of green component. You get a lot of that kind of spicy, dusty, hop dusty kind of thing that you coming out of this beer as well. So maybe this beer does need just a little bit more time to mellow out, actually, because I've always said this about double dry hop beers, I do like them to just be a little bit smoother than this one is at the moment. But yeah, you do get on the front corners of the palate, there is a nice little bit of a bright, very pungent floral aromaticity, and as you go further back it just dries out a wee bit. So yeah, interesting stuff. Yeah, I really like how that side of this beer goes together, though the green side just adds a bit of contrast to the big zesty citrusy thing, because that's the other thing to think about here. It needs a big green component to kind of counter. It needs the wheaty bitiness, and it needs the green component just to sort of counter that, the sheer power of the citrusy quality of that orange. But then yeah, round the front curve of the palate, the beer does have a little bit of a lighter grassiness there, but as I always tell you, when it comes to fruit beers like this, if you add fruit in as an adjunct, it's always going to suppress a little bit of the green side of the beer, and the orange does that. You can feel that big, juicy, kind of pungent orange around the kind of front sides of your tongue, actually. So that's definitely an interesting thing to point out with this beer. Absolutely, that big orangey, zesty character kind of comes out on this one and then some. But yeah, on that front third of your palate then, as I always say, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you really do get a big citrusy pungency coming out of the beer for sure. But yeah, you'll be hearing some cooking noises. My mum's cooking in the kitchen. But yeah, so yeah, the orangey notes out of this are very, very pungent. I think, was it mandarin they said it was? Yeah, it's mandarin juice. So yeah, it's mandarin juice they've used in this one. Mandarin, I've always found, is a little bit more kind of just sharp and thing. I don't know how you would say it. It's a little bit more tart. Well, not tart, but zesty. Mandarin has a real kind of potent zest to it. A really potent zesty quality to it in my mind. So yeah, the pungency of this beer will be straight up down to those mandarins, and that just dominates the beer here. Like I say, I do wonder if this needs a little bit of time to mellow out, but as you progress further into the aftertaste, you start to notice that a bit of the wheat, the kind of, you get a bit of the wheat and a little bit of the oat just kind of coming out, but I think it's mainly the oat. The oats do form a little bit of smoothness underneath the fruits in that front third of your palate, and as the beer mellows out, you do get a little bit of the kind of mango component of the Citra in there, and you can detect a little bit more of the kind of oiliness of the sort of gooseberry, white grapey sort of things that you would get from the Enigma. But other than that, the beer really is very big and zesty. The orange and the mandarin notes in this one are very, very powerful, to be honest with you, and it is the same kind of level of pungency that you get from grapefruit. I mean, normally oranges for me are quite juicy, like regular oranges are quite juicy. You've got tangerines as well, but the mandarin is the one that really has that big citrusy zest to it. It's like that grapefruit level citrus that you're getting out of this beer. So this is a very, very pungent orangey hit, if that makes sense. But when it's called OG IPA, that kind of makes the sense, mandarin juice. So yeah, it is, just be aware that this one has a real potency to the oranges. So yeah, but I do like this. I think this is a beer, maybe I've drunk it a little bit early. I do think maybe it needs a little bit more time to just kind of mellow out, but if you like a big kind of citrusy bite to the beer, then you will enjoy this one. This has shown me another side of Vault City, which I think is quite interesting. But I think over time, one thing I would recommend that Vault City do is, probably they will keep like a case of these beers in the brewery to try. But with things like this one, what I would maybe suggest to them to do is that when they brew these beers, over time, put like a recommended drink date and put a they've got the bottled on, they've got the best before date on this one, but put a bottled on date, put a recommended drink date or brewer's recommendation drink date, and then a best before. That's what I would say. These guys, I think, to get the best out of these beers, particularly the really pungent ones like this, I would recommend that they do something like that, because this one, I do feel that this is a little bit fresh, if that makes sense. It's just a little bit too fresh, and some beers really just need a little bit of time to mellow out, and this one is nice as it stands, but it's quite, the dustiness of the dry hopping and the sheer kind of pungency of the oranges in this one, I can see that this might be quite an overpowering beer for some people that drink it. And yeah, but it's definitely one of the more powerful citrusy beers that I've come across, and I've had 2,600 odd beers on the channel now. So yeah, that is one thing I would say about this beer. This really is quite pungent compared to some of the other ones. So if you're expecting a sweet sour out of this, which is what I was expecting, to be quite honest, you're not going to get that. This is a really kind of fruity and dry hop thing. So when they say a kind of sour IPA, I don't know if it's necessarily sour. I would say it's more of a citrusy IPA. But yeah, OG IPA. It is quite nice. It's very nice actually. But just be prepared that this is one of the more pungent and kind of punchy sours that you're going to find from Vault City actually. So yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me, this one. I like what they're doing with this. There's just something in my head saying I'm drinking this a little bit fresh, but I can see maybe if I'd left this beer another 2-3 weeks, maybe a month, something like that, I think it would be in really, really nice condition. Everything would have just kind of smoothed out a little bit. But it's been in the bottle 6 weeks. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Let me know your own opinions. If you guys have tried this beer before, like seriously, I'd be curious to know your opinions about the citrusy punchiness in this one. This is a beer that's made me think a little bit more, I have to say. But yeah, I think that kind of rounds off everything that we really need to say about the flavour of this beer, to be honest. The hops kind of take a bit of a back seat to the Mandarin, because it is so kind of pungent and powerful, and that, when they say OG IPA, that really is kind of what you get out of this one. But the hops, I think the thing that you're getting mostly out of the hops is that kind of green component, so I suspect it just needs a little bit more kind of mellowing out time, if you like. But yeah, let's have a little taste of it again and have a look at the mouthfeel just to round off the review. So yeah, for me, this beer, it is kind of top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied for me. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It goes down just a little bit like, sort of standard orange juice, to be honest with you. It's got a real mix of sour, and it comes across as a very kind of slick beer in a lot of ways, but it kind of almost dries out a little bit later on, absolutely. So yeah, kind of, I'd say mid to full, top of mid-bodied to kind of bottom end of full-bodied, smooth carbonation, and I think overall it's a fairly just slick and mouthfeel. It's very similar to, just drinking a kind of orange juice, to be honest with you, which I think was the intention. But yeah, in terms of the bitterness out of this beer, it's hard to say because of how powerful it really is hard to say with this beer because of how powerful the citrusy zest in that, because I think at some stage, citrus, the citrusy zest and bitterness kind of go hand in hand. So it almost gives the impression that it is quite a bitter beer, a sort of 70-80 IBU beer, but it really is hard to distinguish between where the bitterness ends and the kind of citrusiness starts, because you really do have a bit of a dry, dusty, dry hopping kind of thing around the edges of your tongue. So that's difficult to say, but it's about the zestiness and the kind of hoppy side of the beer combined. I would say is kind of similar to a very high hopped, very high IBU beer. 80 IBUs minimum. I would think it's quite similar to that. But yeah, the malt base is quite smooth. It takes a little bit of time to show more of its. It takes a little bit more time to show its kind of smooth and sweet side, if that makes sense. But you've also got a good little bit of. You also have a good little bit of a kind of juicy, fruity side out of this one, both from the adjunct fruit, the mandarin juice, and also the kind of, you get the more oily notes from the hops in this beer as well. This is a really very quirky one, actually. As I say, this has showed me another side of Vault City Brewing, and I look forward to trying a few more beers like this over the next little while. I do have one of the regular sour IPAs to review, the Sour IPA version 3, and that will probably be the next one. that you see actually. So I'm curious to have done this one and then compare it to one that doesn't have the adjunct fruit in it, come to think of it. So yeah, I think this is an interesting experimental beer, but it just needs to mellow out a little bit more in my mind. But yeah, another really interesting one from Vault City Brewing, and this is why I like reviewing beer from these guys. Good fruity juiciness both from the adjunct and a little bit more oily character from the hops itself, or themselves I should say. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. As I say, let me know your own thoughts on this beer. I really do think it just needs a little touch more time to mellow out, but as it stands, if you like a big citrusy hit, this is going to be right up your street, and I like the orangey component of this one. The beer does mellow out the more you drink of it, absolutely. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Vault City Brewing. We will return to these guys in the very near future, but in the meantime, this one was the OJ IPA, 7.2% ABV with Citra and Enigma hops. And you know, a big citrusy beast of a beer, this one. It really has a big zest character to it. But lovely to try this, and I look forward to more beers from Vault City in the near future. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media. Check out Vault City Brewing, originally from Edinburgh, but now based in Dundee. Really one of the, you know, this has really shown me a different side of Vault City Brewing, and I look forward to my next reviews. Slàinte, Skål, cheers, and catch you guys on the next one. The OG IPA from Vault City Brewing in Edinburgh. Cheers.